Okay, this is the Modulate skills test about Faraday's law, and it's actually quite straightforward. There's only a few kind of moving parts. One of the moving parts is a little bar magnet here, and you have the option of flipping it. You can have the north end pointing right and the south end pointing left, or the north end pointing left and the south end pointing right. It doesn't really matter. You also have a voltmeter here. The voltmeter is a little different than the voltmeter we've worked with in Module 7. The voltmeter we used in Module 7 had a digital readout. This one's actually got a little needle. On the needle, the greater the voltage, the greater the deflection. That means essentially how far the needle moves. Notice that it can move either negative or positive. That has to do with polarity. But it doesn't matter whether it's a negative polarity or positive polarity. The greater the voltage across the light bulb here, the greater the deflection of the voltmeter. The last option you have, actually, one option you can also have is put on field lines if you want. Again, that's your personal preference. And then the last option we have is you can either have just a single 4-loop coil, or you can have two different coils. You can have a 4-loop coil and a 2-loop coil. To start out with, we're just going to have the 4-loop coil selected. Polarity of your magnet's unimportant. Doesn't matter whether you got it flipped this way or that way. And in question 1, it just tells you to move your bar magnet through your coil and see what happens. Okay. One thing that is important is that you move it with a fairly constant pace. So try to keep your speed essentially constant as it moves through the coil. Notice I'm not going to do it for you. You're going to have to do it on your own. Questions 2 and 3, or question 2 also has to do with that same setup, just you're going to move your magnet through a little more quickly. See if there's a difference. Now in question 3, they want this setup where you have both the 2-loop coil and the 4-loop coil, and it asks a question about your observations. And same thing with question 4. You can answer it with either one of your coils. And then finally, question 5. Again, at this point, you should have learned enough that you can answer this without using the simulation. But if you're not sure, feel free to go ahead and set up the experiment. There's 4 different situations, A, B, C, and D, and you set it up and run the test and use your observations to draw your conclusions. So it's a pretty simple simulation, and hope you learned a little bit about Faraday's law. This is the relationship between magnetic field and electrical current that gets set up in a coil of wire.